This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to this webinar this morning, which is going to be on Excel tips, and thank you for joining us this morning. We've got quite a decent crowd on here, so if you can mute yourself that would be great, or if you can't mute yourself because you're on the phone, just keep the background noise down a little bit. This session is being recorded and will appear on our YouTube channel later on today. So if you want to go to Harts Limited, Harts Limited spelt in full, on YouTube, you're able to have a rerun of the webinar and also be able to catch up on any previous webinars which you may have missed. They're all up there, and we've got plenty more stuff coming out over the next few months as well. We also have the chat box, which you'll see a speech bubble in your top right hand corner of your screen. If you want to stick any questions in there, feel free to do so. And if you want to unmute yourself, and feel free to do that, and you'll be able to ask some questions. We try and make this as interactive as possible. I think there's a lot we're all trying to learn today as well, including myself, because there's a lot to actually learn. But first of all, what I'd like to do is just read out our usual disclaimer, which is the following presentation is produced for general guidance only, and professional advice should always be sought before any transaction is undertaken. Individual circumstances can vary, and therefore no responsibility can be accepted by Harts Limited or any of their affiliates for any action taken or any decision made to refrain from action by attendees of this presentation. As normal, we normally start off with a quick government update, and today's going to be no different. There are still a few things happening out there which you just need to be aware of. So first of all, businesses in the hospitality and leisure sectors in England, you're still eligible for one-off grants of up to £6,000 per premises. And there's more discretionary funding. You just need to get in touch with your local authority to be able to get hold of that. And you can still recover the cost of statutory sick pay for COVID-related absences for small and medium-sized employers across the UK. If you haven't paid your self-assessment bill, which was due a few days ago, and you can't afford to pay it, then you can do an arrangement online with HMRC. You don't actually have to speak to anybody, which is marvellous because they'll only give you the third degree if you do. And if you owe less than 30,000, you can make an arrangement to pay online. And make it payable over 12 months. So that's a very useful facility to have. If you need any details on that, give us a call. Don't forget, we've got the national insurance rise, which looks like it's definitely coming in, unless there's a last minute U-turn, which is always possible, of 1.25% from the 6th of April. Now, this also applies to dividends. So if you're one of the many people who take low salary, high dividends, it also applies to your dividend tax as well. If you've not submitted your self-assessment return, there's still time to do so before incurring a £100 penalty. They extended the deadline till the 28th of February. However, if you hadn't paid your tax by the 31st of January, interest is charged from the 1st of February. So interest is now running on that amount. So to be able to submit your return, you need to know how much to pay, so that you will be incurring interest from now on. Child benefit. HMRC are on the attack with this because of the fact that many people have been claiming child benefit when they're not entitled to. And the child benefit starts getting abated when one of the people living in the household is earning more than £50,000, and it disappears completely if one of you is earning over £60,000. And it's this crazy situation where you can have two people earning £49,000 and you still get full child benefit. And you can have one person earning £60,000 and a penny and you get nothing. That's just the way the system works, but they're looking to claw back overpaid child benefit for the last 6 years. So just be aware of that. And if you've got a problem, get in touch. They're also on the attack about job retention scheme payments where these have been fraudulently claimed. So for instance, your employer might have been claiming, I'm sure none of you have done this, obviously, but people have been claiming job retention scheme monies while your team are still working with you. So just be aware of that. I've put on here as well, the Let's Property campaign is still open. Every year when we do tax returns, and we've just finished doing virtually 95% of them, there are always people who turn around to us and say, well, I've always had this property and I've forgotten to declare the income from it. There is a Let Property campaign which has been open for quite a number of years, which gives you the opportunity to declare this income with a much reduced penalty regime. So it's well worth taking advantage of that. So if you haven't declared any property income and you want to come clean to do so now, now is the time to actually do it, because this campaign is still open. We've done a number of these disclosures in the past, and we often find that once this disclosure has been made, the revenue tend to accept it without any further enquiries. So it's just something to bear in mind. If you've forgotten to declare income on the property, and I mentioned the word forgotten, then that's fine. If it's deliberate, they can go back 20 years. I'm sure no one's done that. But if you've just forgotten, or you thought you were making losses, for instance, you might have been including the mortgage payments in full, where it's just the interest which may have been allowed, then again, we've got this opportunity to make use of this preferred penalty regime. So that's pretty much it on my government update side. We have other Harts Online resources as well. So please follow us on LinkedIn at Harts Limited. We'd love you to follow us. There's lots of stuff going on there. Follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube Limited. Go to YouTube, follow us and type in Harts Limited and just click follow. You'll get notified of any new videos which crop up, and you'll be able to watch those in your own time. And follow us on Twitter at Harts Accountants. We'd love to hear from you if you've got anything to say as well. And moving on to our next webinars, the 17th of February is going to be how to prepare a business for sale. So if you're thinking of selling your business, or you know somebody else who's thinking of selling, then it might well be useful for them to come on board. On the 3rd of March, we're going to be talking about motor vehicles and cars and company cars, and whether you should pay it by a company or whether you pay it yourself. It's probably one of the most common questions as accountants were asked, as what should I put my car through the business? And we'll be talking about electric vehicles as well, because there's enormous tax advantages for that. On the 17th of March, we're talking about networking skills and tips. We have Sarah White from Networking, who's going to be presenting that, who runs a networking franchise for the north part of England, and she operates quite a number of groups, and she'll be talking to us about networking. On the 31st of March, we have our question time event at Macclesfield Rugby Club from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. We're hoping to have a fantastic panel, as we've had in the previous events. And if you want to book on that, again, just go to our events page. And on the 28th of April, we're going to miss one in the beginning of April due to Easter. We're talking about staff retention, so how to look after and keep your staff. Okay, that's enough from me. I'm going to make Colin the presenter, and he is now the presenter. And Colin Foster has his own business called Universal Solutions for Business Limited, and calls himself the Microsoft Office Time Lord. Why? Because he's going to save you loads of time, hopefully, on using Excel and Microsoft Office. If you need to get in touch with him after this event, feel free to do so. We certainly will be. Because he's been training in Microsoft Office for over 22 years. So if what he doesn't know about Microsoft Office and hopefully Excel will not be worth knowing. So again, it's going to be over to you, Colin, and look forward to hearing from you.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Before I share, I start sharing my screen. Although I now call myself Microsoft Office Time Lord, that was coined by someone else for me. We were talking about PowerPoint bizarrely, and he was kept on wanting to change colours of backgrounds to match corporate logos, and he used to try to find out what the RGB values were, and I showed him the eyedropper tool in PowerPoint, and he just turned to me and went, "You're just a Time Lord, aren't you? You just created so much time in my business now." He said, "You're a Time Lord. You're a Microsoft Office Time Lord." And I thought that sounded quite interesting, so I'll keep it. I'm not proud. Okay, so what I'm planning on doing today is I'm going to start with some fundamentals, because when I'm running training sessions, it still amazes me how many people aren't aware of them. So we're going to look at a thing called BODMAS, taking some of you back to O-level or GCSE maths maybe. We're then going to look at freezing panes, absolute relative mixed references, and how to ignore all those little annoying green triangle warnings that pop up, how to quickly copy down formulas and some custom lists, autofills, and stuff like that. We're then going to have a look at and what I think is a relatively novel use for using find and replace, to deal with maybe, although I think probably things are slightly better now, how data can get imported from other systems. We'll look at how to remove duplicate entries, so we can have a unique set of values, maybe to create a data validation list. We'll look at a bit of conditional formatting. We're then going to dip our toe into lookups and if errors and is errors and things like that, and maybe how we can make a long formula easier to read. We're then going to really start getting scary and look at index match and index match for complex lookups, and a nice easy way of how to remember to use them, because I can never remember. And then we'll move on to tables, pivot tables, slices and timelines, and hopefully if we've got time, I'll even put in Stephen's special request of spinners, whatever they may or may not be. So if I just go and hopefully share my screen. Come on, computer. So hopefully you can see the joy that is Excel on my screen. Okay, so I'm going to start with something simple, and I want this to be sort of slightly interactive. So 4 plus 6 divided by 2 times 3 minus 1. Stephen, what would that add to be? What would that add up to?
$14.
We have 14 from Stephen. Okay, somebody else? Anyone else agree with 14 or any other answers?
Come on, guys, shout out.
No one else being brave enough?
10.
14.
10. So what was that other one?
We've got some in the chat box of 14, another one at 12.
14.
Okay, that'll give us a smattering. So if I take that formula that's there, and I just put an equal sign in front of it to turn it into an Excel formula, the answer is actually 12. And the reason why it's 12 is Excel follows the mnemonic, and that's the order it does things in. So the first thing it does is it looks at, let's get rid of the equal sign so we can see the numbers again. First thing it looks at is, are there any brackets there? No, there are no brackets. So next thing it says, are there any overs? Or I've also seen this is referred to as bid mass. So are there any indices? No, as in 10 squared or something like that. No, there aren't. Are there any divides? Ah, yes, there are. So it does that 6 divided by 2 and it gets 3. It then says, are there any multiplies? Oh, yes, there are. There's that now 3 multiplied by 3. So 3 3s are 9. It then says, are there any adds? So it says, yes, I'll add that 9 to that 4, which will give me 13. And then a subtract, and it takes the 1 away, which is why it comes as 12 and not 14. And of course, we get 14 by reading it. We go 4 plus 6 is 10, divided by 2 is 5, times 3 is 15, minus 1 is 14. The reason why this is really important is if you are building a formula, a complex formula with cell references rather than necessarily just simple numbers like that, it's very important to consider whether you want to put a set of brackets round your various calculations to ensure that Excel does the calculations in the order you want it to be, rather than necessarily how it will automatically do things. So I just wanted to, because that can make, not being aware of that can end up making some of your calculations a little bit odd. Okay, next thing I want to do is look at freezing panes. So here we've got an Excel spreadsheet, and the problem is, of course, is once we've scrolled down, we can't see what the headings are. So, okay, in this case, we've only got 6 columns. I'm working with one client on a set of tables that go across to hundreds of columns wide. So what we can do is with our mouse, if we hover our mouse over the row below what we always want to be able to see, and then on the view tab, we have freeze panes. And if we click freeze panes here, that will freeze. So now we have a slightly thicker line going across, and as we scroll down, we can still see those headings. There are, and we can then unfreeze. It's like a switch. There are 2 other options which are, I think, a little bit misleading, because freeze top row, if I'm looking at this as a block of data, I would suggest that the top row is my heading row, and if I've scrolled down a little bit, it would still be that heading row. However, if you do select top row, then it is the top row that is visible on your screen at the moment, and it's the same with first column. It's the column that's the first column that is visible on your screen. Sometimes, however, we'll want to have both the row and the first column, or first couple of columns. We might want the first 2 columns, and in that case, if we click in the cell immediately below the row we want to see, and immediately to the right of the columns we want to see, and then select freeze panes, then you can see we've got the horizontal thicker line and the vertical thicker line. And so if we go across here, we can still see those first 2 columns, and if I go down, I can still see the headings. Because that's such a useful item, I've actually added it up here to my what's called the quick access toolbar. So if you ever see any buttons that are sort of on some of these further tabs that you are using on a regular basis, if you right click on it, one of the options is add to quick access toolbar, and it will throw it up into this toolbar up here. And if you then want to get rid of it from there, if you right click on it up there, there's the option of removing the quick access toolbar. There are lots of other things that you can do with the quick access toolbar, which I'm not going to cover today, just because of time. Okay, so at this point, I'm not going to make any apology for some of my musical taste and musical interest. But what I wanted to just do is share a couple of little bits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this block of data, and I'm going to put in today's date. And if I put today's date in the first cell and press Control and Enter, it will fill the same thing across all of those cells. And that would apply if it was a formula as well. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to just drag that date down by moving my mouse pointer to the bottom right hand corner, drag it down my left hand mouse button, and it fills in all the dates for me. That's quite nice, quite useful. But sometimes I might only want weekdays. So this time, if I drag that same box down, but by holding my right hand mouse button down, it pops up a little set of options. I can have days, which will give me the same as in column G, but if I pick weekdays, it will automatically exclude weekends for me. I can do the same thing, and I can select for it to fill months, and the same thing for it to fill years for me. I can also, if I want, let's just insert, I'll call it days skip. So if I put in the 3rd of February 23 again, and if I drag that down, but this time click series at the bottom, what I can do is I can tell it to put in a step value of 3. It recognizes it's a date, and it's a day is the date unit. So I'm doing every third day. So now it will actually put every third day in for me, just in case you've got weird things. In the background with Excel, we have things like I can drag that down with my left-hand mouse button and it will fill in the months for me, the short months or the long months or the short days or the short dates. But I've added a couple of things. So if I put the letter A in there, because I'm sure we're all happy if we put in something like that, and I'm sure we've all done something like that, but doing it for letters is a bit of a pain, or maybe less so, because you can actually do strange things. And in fact, my computer, no, it's A-double-G, isn't it? I think. Is it? No, it's wrong. I've spelt her name wrong. Double T. So mine sort of really knows some of the people I like to listen to and whatever. And how I've done this, and you can do with products and various other things, is I've selected a range that I'm interested in repeating. Now, okay, I've just picked some names here. This could be products or services that you always list in the same order. And if I go across to my file menu and go down to options, and on the advanced tab, go right the way down to the bottom, we have a thing called edit custom lists. And because I've selected this range first, it's prompted me with the range. And if I click import, then it's added that list. And there's where the Jenny Agata list came from. There's where my ABCs came from. I've got products. I've got the Mondays, the Januaries, that you always get that in Excel. All these others I've added. So now if I close out of that, and if I put, oops, it fills them down. Interestingly, with all of these, so if I start this list with Don, it starts from wherever he was in that list and then carries on that cycle. So again, if I wanted to start my week on a Wednesday, it just keeps rolling round, so I don't have to start on the natural first point of the day. Cell referencing. So here I've got a little calculation, and what I've got here is I need to put in my VAT rate. My VAT rate is down here. So what I want to do is always have the amount of VAT or the VAT rate in here, because I want to do the final calculation. So I'm going to select that cell there. I'm going to press the equal sign. I'm going to click that there. But now what I'm going to do is press F4. What F4 does is it puts, whilst I'm creating the calculation, it puts dollar signs in front of the column reference and the row reference, and that then makes it absolute. And if I then do the control and enter, it fills that in automatically. If I don't do that, I'm sure you'll have seen these little green triangles coming up where Excel, well, I've got a calculation in here, Excel thinks there's something odd, and it says, if I hover over it, the formula in this cell reference refers to a range that has additional numbers adjacent to it. How very dare you not want to use these numbers? Well, I know that it makes sense not having those numbers, because those are maybe the quantities. So what I can do is, if I select all of those first and then tell it to ignore error, it will ignore all of those errors, rather than me having to go, oh, oops, oh, hang on, ignore that error ignore that error, and then losing the will to live. Select all of the ones that have got those errors and then tell you to ignore it, providing they're not errors. Okay, we're now going to create a little times table. So I'm going to select those numbers there. I'm going to click copy. I'm going to click in cell A18, and then from my paste menu, I'm actually going to pick this button, which is transpose. And what that does is it transposes that row into a column. It will do that for a full table of information and reorganize the formulas. So gone are the days where you start building a table and you realize you're going a lot wider than it's going to be deep, and really it should be the other way around. So you delete it and start again. So ordinarily we would do, so I'm doing a times table, and so that times that. And if I'm not careful and don't spot things and drag that out, then we end up with a result that 5 times 5 is 6.37e plus 42. That's Excel trying to be helpful. It's telling us it's the number 6.37 raised to the power of 10 42 times. So there's something obviously gone wrong with our formula. And of course, because we've not told Excel any different, it has changed and just replicated that formula down, and here it's looking at the cell above and the cell to the right, and so it's doing the same there. So a bit like when I was entering these formulas, and with the absolute references on our formula before, I always want this to look at row 17. So I'm going to put a $sign. I'm going to do this manually because it's quicker than pressing the F4 key several times. And I always want it to look at column A. So if I now drag it across, the accountant in me is a lot more comfortable with the fact that 5 times 5 is 25. And so apart from being useful if you've got kids, that you can show them doing a 5 times table, is there any practical use for that? Well, apart from as a reminder of the calculations, if I'm ever building a spreadsheet from scratch, I will always use simple numbers so I can do the maths in my head and then put in the real numbers. Because if it works with simple numbers, it'll work with real numbers. So is there any benefit of that? If I just unhide these rows, there's my original 5 times table calculation that I've then changed. Having got that and it's worked, I've changed the top row to being the number of working days in a month. I've changed the first column to being the number of units we're going to sell each day. I've then added a column where I've got my products, and now I've got a little mini budget for the number of products, units of each product I'm going to be selling over the next 5 months, just by starting the simple 5 times table, but doing the 5 times table to make sure that the numbers were right in the first place. Ooh, something just bipped at me. Not quite sure what that was, so I shall carry on unless Stephen tells me otherwise. Again, I'm sure we're familiar with this situation where we have to do a formula where we're doing a calculation, and then some of us, I suspect, would then copy that and then select where it needs to go, and would then do paste, and it will go all the way down, which is great. It works. However, if we do that first bit, the same, and then move our mouse pointer to the bottom right hand corner, it turns to a big black cross, and if we double click, it will fill that all the way down. We can check that it's gone all the way down by pressing Shift and Enter, and the active cell will go from G2 down to G44, so we can see, oh yes, it's definitely at the end of that range. So we've got this table. The problem we've got is the dates over here aren't real dates. Somebody's put them in with dots instead of slashes. So if I widen that column, as you can see, they're left aligned, which is not how a date should be. So do I have to go and redo everything? No, I can just select those dates. I can off the home key over on the right hand side, I can select replace, and I can say find what I want to find a dot. It's only going to look in that range. I want to replace it with a slash, and I say replace all, and now I've got, as it tells me up here, they're all dates, and if I want I can actually format them however I want them to be formatted, and if I widen the column they're now formatted on the right hand side, which is how we would expect dates to be. I've said find replace create drop down, so what I'm going to do is I'm going down, I've selected all of the I didn't do it at the top, I must get used to doing that. I've selected that range, pasted it somewhere else, and what I'm now going to do is go into the data tab, and there's this button over here called remove duplicates. So if I click that button, it's looking at column L, click OK. So now it's removed all of the duplicates and there are only 3 items that remain. I can then use that list to create on all of these. If I wanted, I could create a data validation list by saying I want to list my source, I want to be those 3 cells there, and if I click OK, I've now got a little drop down list here where it gives me the option to select those lists. I don't have to retype my originals. I can get Excel to go and actually find out what the unique items are. I'm interested now in, I'll just select my total there, and I want to just pick up some, quickly spot some highlighted values. So off the home tab, we've got conditional formatting, and I want to highlight maybe the top 10 items. So it's picking up the top 10 items and it's filling them automatically, and I can change that to be top 5 or whatever. So very quickly I can see the top whatever items, or I can remove that conditional formatting and maybe I'll give it a color scale. So now I've got the whole thing colored based on the values that are in the cells. And again, lots more we can do on that. I'm just sort of a bit tight on time. So here we've got two sets of pay slips. Got one and we've got another one, and here I've got 3 versions of lookups, where this lookup is looking at the ID in that should be month 2, and it's comparing that ID to month 1, and it's saying, does that exist? Now, if this is just me internally, then I'm getting a hash NA error here. So what that's telling me is it can't find that number in that list. So if this is just internal, fine, it can't find it. And I'm doing this comparison. This could be a bank reconciliation or post-led reconciliation, whatever. I might want to make it a bit neater though. So I've got this formula here, and it says if that formula gives me an error, then it's going to be a new employee. So I'll put in the word new employee. Or if it isn't an error, then actually do the calculation. Now, something we can do is deepen the formula bar, and if we get a longish formula, then if we do Alt and Enter within our formula, we can actually move it onto different lines to make that formula slightly easier to read. Excel still works normally, but it just means the formula can be easier to read. Problem with this is we're having to do the formula twice. So lovely people at Microsoft created an if error function where we put the function that we want to work, and then as the second argument what to display if we have an error, which saves quite a lot of typing and gives us the same answer. Okay, so the problem that we have with VLOOKUPs is we have to be looking down the first column. There is a set of functions called index match, and that allows you to look down one column and return the answer from a different column, and it's not relying on that first column. So maybe I want to type in, for example, Noddy, and I want to know what company he works for. Well, I can never remember the order to do index matching. But if I do 3-letter I's and hit enter, I get something happening. It pops up with name. And what I've done is I've set the information I need in the order I need it, and I've added that to the autocomplete in Excel. So now I can hover over step 1 lookup cell, and I can click on the cell where it is. I can pick what column I want to look at. So he's going to be in that column, and then the result column that I need to look for is there. And now if I hit enter, why have I got an error? Because let's make that absolute, let's make that absolute, and let's make that absolute, and it would help if I actually put a comma where it needs to be. And now if that changes to EMP, that changes. There's a further version of this. So for example, let's do EMP again, and I want to know what companies. So there's another one which is called index match match, and again I can never remember the order to do this. So the table I want to look at with my headings, so I pick my whole table here. So again I'm going to press F4 to fix it. My step 2 is what cell I want to look up. So I want to look up that cell. What column is he? What column is he in? He's going to be in that column. Where's the next bit? Because this is now a row, so I'm looking across that row. And finally, my row there, I want to look at that. Ooh. Isn't it nice when something doesn't work when you want it to? My table to look in with my headings is there. My lookup cell that I want to find is there. My lookup column is there. My lookup cell is there. And my lookup row is there. There we are. So now if I want to know how much money he earns, I change that. It goes and finds that one and brings the answer from there. And how I did those III and IMM is, again, under File Options, we have, and it's under Proofing, we have autocorrect options. And so I typed III, and here you can see the start part of my index. So I typed it as a piece of text within my within Excel and copied it out. So again, a useful, I find that a very useful time saver because it saves me having to worry about things. Okay, so I've got a big long list here of stuff. I'm just going to remove the freeze page just for the video. First thing is I want to turn this into a table. So I'll pick format as a table. I'm just going to pick, I'll better pick wolf's colours, hadn't I? So it's gone and found the whole range of this data that's a contiguous range. So we don't want any blank rows. And it says my table has headers. These are the headers across here. I'll click OK. And now I've got a set of, oh God, that's, I think I better change that color. Let's just have it as a much more standard one. Okay. And someone who was showing this to said, but all it's done is it's made it look pretty, put occasional horizontal lines across and put some filters at the top. And when you're in the table, if you scroll down, the column letters are replaced by the field headings or the headings from the top of the table. And yes, it does do that, but it also takes you to this table design tab automatically. Here you can give it a name, and if I've ever created a table, I always change the name to begin with TBL, and this goes back to sort of databases and whatever, and I will call it table sales orders. Okay. And the nice thing about this is then an expanding range. So if I have more information on here, so for example, 3rd of February 22, it's going to be Central, it's going to be Jardine that's doing it. He's going to be selling yet another binder, and he's going to sell 50 of them. And the binders, he's selling at $4.99. And you'll notice that the table has automatically expanded, and any formulas in there, if I just go back one, the formula has already filled in for me. But what this allows me to do as well is to summarize it with a pivot table automatically. It looks at this range, and I'm going to just put it on my existing worksheet, and I'll put it here just for the. And so I've now got the base of a pivot table. So what I can now quickly do is I want a column for each region. I want a row for the total sales for each rep, and I want to know what their total sales are. I may want because I'm wanting some additional information, I'm going to drag my region down onto the rep. So now, in fact, that's a bit messy. So actually, I'll do regions first. So I'm now looking at the regions to see who sold where. And what I'm then going to do is I'm going to drag the total in again. And I've dragged the total in again, which looks a bit odd, but this time it comes in as a default. It comes in as sum, but actually what I want to know is what the average sales are. I don't like that formatting, so I'm going to again click on the value formatting. I'm going to go to number format, and I'm just going to select 2 decimal places. By doing it that way, it affects it across the whole of the whenever you add new data in, rather than actually selecting the range to do things. What I can also do is I can drag my total in again. I'll drag it in there. So I've brought it in again. But this sum of total 2, I want to be different. I want to know, I want it as a percentage of the grand total. So I can now see who has sold, what their average selling price is, and what their totals are, or percentage totals are. And what I can then do by looking at the pivot table analyze, I'm going to add in a thing and just move. I'll just drag my pivot table. I'll move my pivot table, and I'll just move it further down just to give me plenty of space. And what I'm then going to do is I want to insert a slicer, and the slicer picks up all of these headings because I'm just interested in being able to filter this by the item that they're selling. Just make that slightly smaller. So, and I can hear beeping, which is probably questions being asked, possibly. So I'll pick up as many of those as I can in a moment. So I'm looking at everything. If I just want to see binders, my pivot table is now and actually I do want that there, so I'll move my slicer and I'll make it a 2-column slicer, and I'll make it a bit wider and I'll make it a bit narrower so it'll fit there so I can see it. So I'm now just seeing binders, or I'm just seeing pens, or if I hold my control key and select 2 of them, I'm now seeing pens and desks. And what I might also want to do is insert a timeline based on the order date. So I've now got a little slicer here that says, right, I just want to look at the month of July, or just at the month of August, or maybe August and September, or maybe July, August and September, which is that quarter. And finally, spinners. So we've got somebody, we want to work out what his taxable income is, and we want to work out what the tax rate to work out what his net income is. So I've set the spinner to go up in increments of £1,000. I've got a tax rate which I can change by percentages, and I've done the calculation just so Stephen knows how to do them. This one was one he asked. I first of all have to start with my bits. I don't know why I just didn't copy them, but never mind. Okay, so my tax payable is my taxable income multiplied by my tax rate, and my net income is my taxable income minus my tax payable. So far, so good. I'll even put some totals in, some lines in. To create a spinner, it's off the developer tab, and we go on to insert and we select spinner, and we tell it where we want it to put it. And then what? Well, we go into the properties, and this is where we can tell it what its current value should be, what its minimum value should be, so we can make sure we can't go negative, and what its maximum value can be. We then decide what the incremental change needs to be. So I want that to be £1,000. And then, having done that, once I've picked it from the spinner, what cell am I interested in changing? So this is where I just point to the cell I'm interested in, and I click OK. So now move away from that, and now as I start changing that, that will change. So I want to do the same for the tax rate. Put my spinner, go into my properties. The problem that we have is these values can only be integers. So for percentage, I can only go between 0 and 1. But if I put between 0 and 1, the incremental change I want to be percentages, so that's not going to help me. So I need to go between 0 and 100. And I then need to link that to a different cell. And then my tax rate becomes that cell that I'm looking at divided by 100. And I might actually then want to make it as a percent. So now my spinner has created a value of 1, which has then been divided by 100 here, formatted a percentage, and my calculation has worked. In an ideal world, if you're doing this for someone else to use, you may well have that underneath the spinner, make the spinner the full size of the cell, and you can't see the number that you wanted to play with. So if I stop sharing my screen, oh no, I can still share my screen, but if I come onto here, then I can see you, Stephen.
That was quite amazing, to be honest. I don't know about everybody else, but I've actually been blown away by what I've seen so far. And there's so much to take in there, Colin. It's just quite amazing. Colin, if you want to share your details in the chat box, so we've got it in there. If you want to put your contact details
if I can find me how to put it in the chat box.
There's a speech bubble top right-hand corner of your screen. If you want to go
Oh,
into
yeah.
that, and if you just type in your details there, because I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people who want to ask you stuff. Now, at the moment, we haven't had any questions. The beep you hear is people
So
coming and
there's a
going
couple of
into the
questions
meeting.
in there.
No, there's no questions in there at the moment. Has anybody got any questions they want to ask? Because I know there's an enormous amount of content in there, but we wanted to try and give you an idea of what you can do with Excel and some of the stuff that you can use. So Colin's put his details in there.
I've just
Feel
put my
free to
email
give him a
address in
call.
there.
Yeah. And has anybody got any questions they want to ask? Feel free to unmute yourself and just shout out, because there's an awful lot there to take in. If anybody's got anything they want to ask, please, now's the time to do so. Please feel free to do. If not, email Colin direct. He is open for training for your company or on a one-to-one basis. So feel free to contact him. I'm sure we will be after that as well, because I've recognised loads of stuff that we could actually use within what we do, and I'm sure a lot of the team could as well. We have no more questions by the looks of it. We are running over time. I just want to say a huge thank you to Colin for joining us this morning. What you don't know actually is Colin tested positive for COVID yesterday, and he's actually suffering with it at the moment, although you couldn't really tell. So a huge thank you to Colin for doing that for us, and no doubt we shall be in touch. But thank you very much indeed for everybody else for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. And thank you very much indeed, and have a great day.
No problem.